Hello, everybody. I'm going to read some selections from a book I wrote. I finished it, let me think now. I finished it a little over 6.5 years ago, I think. And it's called, the name of the novel is Redundant Suspenders. And I think it's the most cohesive thing I've ever written as far as one large narrative. But I don't think it's the best thing I've ever written. Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to find something. Okay. I'm just going to read some stuff at random here from the novel. Rita beat a dozen red lights on her way to her rendezvous with Ronnie Two-Beaks. "I have the knack," she boasted, taking a seat in the window of the tiny tea shop where she regularly met with Ronnie. The knack, Ronnie repeated, musing sleepily. They were very similar to Cheap Trick, really. Rita glanced at Ronnie's three-quarters profile, staring at the old wooden floor. She poured herself a cup of tea from the pot already ordered. "Before my time," she confessed. Ronnie Two-Beaks turned to her. She was 9 years older than he. "No," he argued. "No, they were exactly what you should have been listening to when you were, what, an 8th grader?" She frowned. "I have no idea. You remember My Sharona, right?" Rita gulped like a catfish in a bucket. She finally let her irritation and hesitation go. "Yes," she sighed. Ronnie smiled. He reached across the little table and placed his left hand on her right wrist. She smiled back, but freed herself to pour some milk into her tea. As she scanned the array of little cakes on the plate between her and her friend, she spoke. I don't know how the British drink their tea straight away after pouring it. I can't stand burning my tongue." Ronnie shrugged. Hold on a second. "They probably don't. That's just the way it seems from the way it's portrayed in movies and TV." Rita glanced at Ronnie. She had a good understanding of daily life as it was presented in movies and TV. Maybe they let it cool down in the pot first," he suggested. "Well, that's another thing," she began, selecting a jam-filled cube from the plate. "You've got to let it steep." Ronnie grabbed a miniature eclair she had not chosen. They had to move on to other subjects. "Did you learn anything from your brother?" he asked. "No." She took a bite. It was good, but then everything at Ethelflade's tea room was always good. She hoped the place wouldn't go out of business before she was thoroughly sick of it. Something in her tone was as heavy and immobile as the last brick added to a wall around a private estate. Ronnie let his choice of morsel sit untouched. He took a breath. "Do you want to sleep together today?" His words came out like children impatiently rushing their turns on the playground slide. Rita ran her thumb along the side of her mouth as she looked across the table. She was taking the question seriously. Still, she started to nod even as she picked up the teacup. "Yes," she continued to nod, sipping at the tea. She almost said, "think so," but then changed that to a definite "do." "Yes, I do," she told Ronnie. They held each other's gaze, she looking over the rim of her cup, he both surprised and pleased, breaking into the same kind of grin one makes over a shared joke. "Now?" he wondered, suggesting, rolling his eyes towards some other place. He looked a little like Jamie Farr, only with features most definitely Indian. He had cut his hair short for her, negating the need for the band he had habitually worn about his forehead. She said he looked so much neater, but he had regretted it immediately. "Let me finish my tea," Rita smiled, charmed at his boyish eagerness, but still unsure of what she was getting into. Although they had been meeting here for some time, they had not yet moved on to any bedroom. She was nearing 65 years old, and was reluctant to show her body to anyone. Yet soon she put down her cup and followed him outside. Ronnie put a couple of little cakes in the pocket of his jacket for later. Ronnie had an apartment near the factory where he worked as a foreman. Rita had never seen it, although Ronnie had been out to her house before to walk with her up and down the sidewalk out front. Now they walked the 3 blocks to this apartment, where an unwelcome surprise awaited them both. "Ronnie," Jen cried, standing up from the steps leading to the apartment. "Ronnie, 2 weeks. The building manager told me you'd probably be back soon." She allowed her gaze to take in the old white woman standing within earshot. "Hi," she greeted Rita, after a second or two in which Ronnie could not get around the boulder of rage that seemed to be blocking the speech center of his brain. "Jen Potter," she announced, realizing that politics was in her future whether she liked it or not. She extended her hand. Rita took the hand as if it was a coupon for a free prostate exam. She released it almost immediately. "Rita Morgan," she replied, eyes going dry from not blinking. "Well, Rita," Jen confided like a kindergarten teacher informing the children that there were indeed unpleasant things in life. "Ronnie and I have important business to discuss." So Ronnie Tubix pushed past the boulder, but not the rage. "Important business," he growled. "Yes, Ronnie," Jen insisted, stepping closer. "The unbroken lineage of the chieftainship is at stake." "Jen," Ronnie began, closing his eyes and taking a breath. "Ronnie," warned Rita, touching his shoulder, "if you need, I can—" Did Ronnie interrupt her, or did she trail away on purpose, leaving him space in which to interrupt? Truly, they were familiar with each other. The way Rita had touched his shoulder was evidence enough of that. "No," Ronnie interjected emphatically, shaking his head, eyes still closed. "Jen," he turned to the interloper, "Jen Potter, I really don't have anything to say to you or to discuss with you." And, he added with as much contempt as he had pronounced the woman's self-selected last name, "I am not going to help you slip into the chieftainship." He made a bird with his flattened palm and drove it through the air. Jen narrowed her eyes. "Well," she said sourly, putting her hands on her hips, "I certainly didn't expect anti-feminist, misogynistic attitudes from you." She glanced at Rita to see if there was a smidgen of support there. Rita, however, kept her eyes on Ronnie's profile. "Maybe I had better," she began, but again Ronnie anticipated her thoughts. He fished in his pocket for his keys and thrust them into her hand, saying, "Go on in. I'll be in a minute." Jen pointedly made comment as Rita walked past her. "Well, thank you for granting me a minute of your time," she told Ronnie. I could continue with that thread, but we're going to skip ahead a little bit. Okay. No, let's not do that one. No. I tell you what. Let's go back to near the beginning. This book is only about 80 pages. Yeah. But it is novel length. I mean, it is 50,000 words or whatever the hell it is. 500,000 or whatever. Okay. Let me see. Let's go to the beginning of this section here. Okay, here we go. Down in the valley, Wilkes, having defeated Rita, made his way to the research factory to which Dr. Fungroyd was assigned. "I jacked off thinking about Donna Kate again," he confessed. "For God's sakes, Doc, she's young enough to be my daughter." Dr. Fungroyd returned a pen-like object to his pocket protector. "Yes, well, that's not really what I'm here for," he told Wilkes. Wilkes, sitting on the edge of a desk in one of the many disused offices made available to Dr. Fungroyd, hung his head and sighed. "I know," he agreed. "It's just that you're the only person in town that has the years, the wisdom to understand what I'm talking about, what I'm going through." This wasn't true. Dr. Fungroyd, being but a robotic puppet, had no sexual feelings and no experience with romantic attachment. In order to achieve and maintain the necessary inquisitorial rapport with his subjects, he had learned to fake many things, but the particulars of this situation had irritated and exhausted him to the point that he found it hard to summon up even the barest empathic responses. Drawing on his deepest resources, Dr. Fungroyd managed to sigh convincingly and nod his head. "I understand," he told Wilkes, keeping his eye on the ancient calendar tacked up on the wall to his right. It showed a hunting dog leaping over a stream, disturbing butterflies in its determined pursuit of some unseen quarry. According to the words printed below this picture, the calendar was a gift from the C.D. Enterly & Sons pharmaceutical concern. Probably long forgotten by even the oldest archivists in the area, decided Dr. Fungroyd. "But," he continued, turning to look at his visitor, "to be honest, I can't get involved in all this." True enough, time was running out. "Doc," repined Wilkes, "I consider you a friend." Of course, Dr. Fungroyd hastened to interject, somewhat embarrassed. I consider you a friend too, Mr. Wilkes. Of all the subjects I've been working with here, and he trailed away, feeling this was not quite the right tack. Tell me, he said quickly on. He led quickly on. Do you know anything about this seedy Intraley & Sons? He pointed to the calendar. Wilkes looked up. He raised his eyebrows. Big calendar, he commented. Yes, it is my understanding that in that time before television and motion pictures, such large lithographs were a valued part of home decorating. Would that the Pantheon Nadar was more famous today. Dr. Fungerwood added, realizing in the same instant that Wilkes was unlikely to ken the reference. I remember my grandfather had a huge print of all the kings of the Glard. It hung in his workshop. Wilkes stood from his desk and walked to the calendar. The workshop was just a half-built structure with exposed beams and joists, no interior paneling. I always wondered what was behind the print, and one day when he wasn't around, I looked. I pulled it back, and Wilkes acted out his narrative, taking the edge of the calendar in his fingers, and he paused, peering behind the modern day. Hey, did you know there's a safe back here? I'm not surprised, Dr. Fungroyd lied, rolling over to join his friend. This was once a secure storage area when the Parthenogram Company occupied the building. He took a look at the safe, tried the handle. It was locked, and turned to Wilkes. Did you find a safe behind the Kings of the Glard? He asked. No, grunted Wilkes. No, it was a hornet's nest. A big one. Dead, but still. Why did you hide it? Cover it over with his print. He shook his head wonderingly. Strange old man. Dr. Fungroyd's eyes rolled to the snout of the hunting dog covering its secret. He mused on the activities that would take place after he had managed to send Wilkes on his way. Listen, Mr. Wilkes, he spoke with authority and resolve, I'm beginning to think that perhaps you need to act on these desires. Have you ever read any William Blake? The sports writer? Wilkes wondered. Dr. Fungroyd took a sharp breath. No, Mr. Wilkes, not the sports writer. Listen, the point is that evidently this obsession of yours is distracting you from the enjoyment of everyday life. I know I've advised you in the past to avoid Donna Kate, but now I think that you need to try to pursue her affections just as any other suitor would. But what about her husband? Wilkes asked, as much of himself as the scientist. His eyes scanned the floor before him. It was black and filthy, unswept for years. Dr. Fungroyd shrugged. People do have affairs. From what you've told me, this Donna Kate is quite the flirt. The word was a novelty in his mouth, like a candy from Japan, far too sweet and strangely textured. Yeah, Wilkes nodded, seeing a tawdry soap opera of possibilities before him. I'm an old man, but maybe if I get her drunk, that's the idea, Dr. Fungroyd encouraged his guest, whom he was eager to be rid of, but also eager not to be reminded of the hidden safe. Wilkes looked at Dr. Fungroyd. He stood a little straighter, a little taller. Thanks, Doc. He took the scientist's hand and shook it warmly. You don't know what your friendship has meant to me these past couple of months. Well, thank you, Dr. Fungroyd returned, cranking out a smile. I'm going to start work on this right away. Wilkes moved to the door. I'll see you later, and good luck on the safe. He nodded his snowy head towards the wall. Dr. Fungroyd merely waved goodbye. He said nothing. All right, folks, I think that was a pretty good little reading, and I'll see you guys later.